Hello and welcome to Select and Start, the podcast about meaningful and memorable video games. I'm your host, Keifer, and every episode I bring on a guest who selects a game that made an impact on their life. I have a wonderful guest with me today. They are a fellow Moonshot creator and the host of Unnatural Selection, a podcast about film adaptations of books. It's Emma Shannon. Emma, how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. Yeah, like Kiefer said, I'm Emma. I use any pronouns. I'm on a few different Moonshot shows, but the one that I host and edit and do all on my own is Unnatural Selection. Kiefer is actually this month's guest, which is exciting.
Yeah, I am on to talk about one of my favorite books and one of my favorite movies, True Grit. So it was a huge honor being on this, being on your podcast, and I'm also just incredibly grateful that you can be on mine. Yeah, this is a great time for me to ask, because I usually ask, what do you do and what do you like here? Tell me about the other Moonshot shows that you're a part of so people can get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah, so I am on Dead Teen House Party, which was originally a mini series that was supposed to be like a recap and analysis podcast of the MTV Scream TV show, which was semi unlicensed. And we enjoyed doing it enough that it is expanded on to we are tackling other slasher TV show content now. Occasionally I'll pop up on Indie Mixtape, which has recently become part of Moonshot, was originally just part of Uppercut Crit. And then I'm on the most recent season of Riley Hopkins and Their Amazing Friends, Interstitial Infinity.
Yeah. So a very busy bee over there on Moonshot. I'm, jack of all trades and master of all of them. But beyond podcasting, what else does Emma like to do?
So I'm a writer first and foremost. I mostly do short stories and plays. I also don't just keep busy in Moonshot. I have 3 jobs. I do a lot of different things. I bartend, I work at museums, but I also do some freelance like journalism stuff here and there. I've done stuff for the Be More Art magazine and for Uppercut also. But when I'm not like writing or doing stuff like that, I like to be a silly little guy. I used to do a lot of comedy. Now do more like tabletop games, swing dancing, stuff like that.
Yeah, you do everything. You do everything, it seems like.
If I don't keep moving, I'll die.
Okay, well, I'm glad that you're on this show then, because it'll keep you going then. You're like the freaking bus from Speed over here. But let's stop talking about everything and focus on something here, and that specific something being video games. As we know, no community likes to gatekeep more than the gamers, so we have to check your gaming credentials here. You didn't mention video games in your long list of things you like to do, so let's talk about your gaming history a bit. Who or what got you into it, your relationship with it throughout the years, and so on. What is Everything Emma's Portrait of a Gamer?
So I wasn't allowed to play video games when I was a kid.
Oh.
Because when the first Super Mario game came out, my dad played it so much and so obsessively that he sprained his thumb, and he decided that video games were bad, actually.
Oh no.
Which is extremely funny because my mom was actually a professional voice actress for video games.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, this is incredible. I'm loving all of this. That's nuts. So you are both worlds of gaming. So if you don't mind me asking, how did your dad feel about your mom participating in video game voice acting in any capacity?
He was fine with that.
Yeah. That was bringing money in. You weren't spending money on games.
Yeah, there's just I think there was also a difference for my dad between different types of gaming. My dad loves an arcade cabinet. There is just something about console gaming. I don't know what it was. There was just something where he was like, it's fine that my wife is making this for other people. And I do objectively like video games, but also they're bad for you.
They literally caused him physical harm.
Which is, my dad's an artist too, so having hurt thumbs is kind of a big deal. So I didn't have, I would occasionally get to play video games at my friends' houses as a kid, but I didn't have my own console at all, or set up until my grandma went over my dad's head for Christmas when I was, I think, 9, and got me a Nintendo DS Lite and Pokemon Pearl. And that was my first video game.
That's incredible. I mean, I've heard this before where grandmas go over the heads of their parents and then cause brain rot for their children forever.
Mm-hmm.
Common story on here, but that is such a very specific set of circumstances. This is nuts. Do you remember how your dad felt about you getting that DS?
He just kind of accepted it. I think
Okay.
he was probably like a little annoyed, but also it was the kind of thing where he was like, well, I can't get mad at it because that's my mother-in-law.
Right.
And also, like, we knew for a fact that like my two other best friends growing up, we all like lived on the same block, very stereotypical, like that kind of growing up experience. We knew for a fact that they were both also getting either Pokemon Pearl or Pokemon Diamond for Christmas.
Right.
And he wasn't just going to be like, well, you get to be left out.
Well, I mean, Pokemon Pearl is a really good, like the Pokemon games in general are really good like starter games for people. What was it like playing that as like the first game that you got to own for yourself?
It was awesome. It ruled. Good game.
And it brought you here today. So what else did you like get into after that?
I've mainly like played like when it comes to more like, I don't know, like official games, I focused in the Nintendo realm just because like that was sort of the thing that like convinced my dad that video games were fine. There was a non-button physical element to the DS with the stylus, the Wii you had to move around. Like that convinced him that it was fine and not just sit down and play video games and rot your brain.
Sure.
But then I guess around high school, I started playing more stuff on my computer. I'm not a very technologically savvy person. I never have been. I didn't have internet access until I was in middle school on my own computer. I didn't have an email until I was in my junior year of high school. So I didn't have an email until like late 2014. So it's slow to the uptake, but having a nice time is my relationship with video games.
Okay.
And in the last few years, playing a lot more like, I really like a good indie game. I like a weird indie game. I play a lot of like mystery or horror type of games. And then also the Phoenix Wright series owns my life.
Yeah. Great series. A very common refrain here and like an episode that I've done on it. Like I'm trying to get more into that kind of adventure style game myself. I'm assuming the DS got you into Phoenix, right?
Oh yeah.
What else do you remember playing on that DS?
Oh man, I still have most of my DS games actually.
Oh yeah, me too.
Because I have a 3DS that I still use quite regularly, and I still have a lot of my old DS games. But I know that like the first Zelda game I played was Phantom Hourglass.
Weird one for the first, but yeah, go on.
It means that I have like a deep fondness for Phantom Hourglass that nobody else does. Everybody else is like, why do you like that one? I'm like, because it was my first and I was 9. What do you want from me? It was one of the first games that I like fully beat the storyline of. I was very excited.
Linebeck rules. I like Linebeck.
Yeah.
That was a game that like it was the Zelda game I struggled with the most. So it's very interesting that that's like the first video game you've beaten. But continue.
Yeah. What else? Obviously, like several various Pokemon, Zelda, Phoenix Wright, like series with multiple sets of games. And then I started getting more into a friend loaned me a copy of Hotel Dusk, and I loved that. And that's probably what started setting me off on mystery games and like detective games. And that was almost one of the games that I talked about on here today.
Yeah. So what is it that draws you to mysteries? Is this like having to do with like your relationship with books? You do a book podcast after all.
Yeah. Yeah, I do love reading mysteries. It's always been one of my favorite genres ever since I was a kid. There's just something really fun about it. And I think it works extremely well for video games as a medium because of that interactive element.
Right.
It's always, whether you're watching or reading or participating in a mystery, like you get to be involved. You get to try to solve it. And the fact that you have an actual effect on solving it in video games heightens that relationship and that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, puzzle games and mystery games make you feel like a genius because they requires your interactivity to solve these things.
Exactly.
Like it's amazing just watching a movie where you see people be smart in a rich and satisfying way, but getting to feel like the person that's so smart and overcoming those obstacles. Like speaking of like one puzzle that like stumped me. Like when I say like I struggled with Phantom Hourglass, there's like one very specific puzzle in Phantom Hourglass, and it was one where it's like, oh, here's the location of the third thing you need to get, the third dungeon, and it's like, okay, cool, I know that location now, and like you go there and it's like, oh, the story can't progress. It's like, what do you mean? And it's like, I know where it is. And I was like, I tried drawing it on the map on the DS screen. And what you're supposed to do is like you look at it and you close the DS to stamp the location onto your actual map.
Yep.
And I was like, this stumped me for days. I lost my life to this.
Yeah, that was a hard one. That's one of the things I liked about the DS and like bit of Hourglass is the fact that you get to use the format in really fun ways.
Yeah, there was like really cool and creative things like that. Every time you played a Mario game and closed it, Mario would say bye-bye. And
Yeah.
that was cute, but never, and like there was so many touch, like the whole Phantom Hourglass game was touch based to the point where you have to use the stylus to move Link around.
Mm-hmm.
But like I didn't think it'd go to the extent where you have to close the DS in order to solve a puzzle. So that was crazy. And like that whole time I'm getting there, I'm like blowing into the microphone to put out fires and stuff. I never think, oh, it's because I gotta close the DS.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. Generally, yes, it's such a satisfying and rich experience when you intentionally solve a puzzle or like solve a mystery because of your awareness or like you paying attention to the story or just like uncovering something. That's why the Phoenix Wright games are so great and so on. What other mystery games do you enjoy?
I really like the entire Rusty Lake series. Rusty Lake is both the name of the studio and the name of the game series. It's an indie developer, and they get more and more elaborate as it goes on, but it is a non-chronological story that has vibes of like Twin Peaks and The Shining, and it's very cool. It starts as like point and click escape games. You're trying to like escape a room, figure it out, but it's got really weird logic to it a lot of the times. And the more of the games you play, they start adding in more elements and you get to see more of the story from different chunks of time. And the more familiar you get with the way they plan their puzzles, the easier it gets to solve them. Like it doesn't become easy ever, but you start to figure out like, oh, obviously I need to hand the baby a fish because 5 games ago when I handed the baby a fish, it spit out a key. Like stuff like that.
It's immersive in the sense where it's like you become like inundated into the logic of this world. So it doesn't
Yes.
necessarily like the puzzles aren't less abstract or anything like that, but you're just attuned to the sensibilities of this world because you've been a part of it for so long.
Yeah, that's like the perfect Venn diagram of what I like between like a mystery game, a puzzle game, and a horror game.
Okay. Yeah, you mentioned, being part of Dead Teen House Party, you like horror. Whatever you're like,
Yeah.
what's your relationship with horror games, which in my experience are way scarier than watching horror movies?
So I don't play any of the really scary ones. I don't
Okay.
like things with jump scares. Also, I get motion sick really easy from a lot of the first person 3D games. So I have to play a lot. Like if I'm going to play a video game, most of the time it's going to be 2D or something that like the timing and motion sensitivity is like not as much involved. So I really like horror games where it's not necessarily supposed to be a jump scare or gross out factor, but it builds like dread
Okay.
and unease in the storyline. That's what the Rusty Lake games do. I really liked, recently I played Killer Frequency, where you're a radio DJ who is taken over the 911 line while the cops are gone, and there's a serial killer going through town, and you're like helping the people who are being hunted by the serial killer while being a late night radio DJ who's trying his best. And that's like one of the few first person move around games that I have played recently and was able to get through.
Right.
Or something like Yuppie Psycho too, which is a more recent game, but it draws on like older 8-bit art for the kind of vibe with extremely detailed close-ups during cutscenes. But what I like about Yuppie Psycho is you don't have to grind or level up or necessarily be great at games, because the more you play it, like it is just getting better at the stages and the timing, almost in the same way as like Celeste is. It's one of those games where you can concretely feel yourself getting better at it.
Right. Have you played, I know you mentioned first person as like a thing you got motion sick, but the Yuppie Psycho and things like that also being first person. Have you tried Return of the Obra Dinn, which is a mystery first person
It's
game?
on my list.
Okay.
I haven't played it yet, but it's on my list of games to play.
It feels like a US game, like the game that would like press all the buttons for you. If you like mystery, and like there's this, I don't know if gothic is the fair word to describe that thing, but it is definitely a period piece with
It's
also like
on,
mystical elements
yeah.
to it. Yeah, definitely check that out if you like mysteries and atmospheric kind of immersive stories.
Yeah, I love stuff like that. I've been playing through Immortality with my partner,
Hmm.
which also has that like weird unease, putting things together sort of vibe. And it also falls into the category of like, I like games with more unique mechanics. And the way that game functions is you are doing match cuts of different films and trying to figure out clues to what happened to this actress based on her filmography and interviews.
Yeah, I talked about that developer a lot in relation to like FMV games when we talked about older Phantasmagoria and a little bit in the, I think, Inscription, the horror card,
Oh,
the
I
horror.
love Inscription.
I bet you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah, great game, Inscription. But so yeah, indie games, puzzle games, mystery games, indie mystery puzzle games, and you do like tabletop games, which goes back into
Yes.
Inscription a little bit. It seems like you have the DS, and you're messing with like the indie games of now. What would you say your favorite console is? Like, what is the console that you feel like you have the closest relationship with?
I mean, probably my 3DS.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Obviously, like, I use my Switch a lot. I play a lot of games on the Switch, but I like the 3DS because I can play some newer games, but I am still able to use it to access those games I have nostalgia for. Because my first games were Nintendo DS games, I can still play the ones that I have and replay them on my 3DS. Plus, it's just very portable.
It is, yeah. I have not messed with my 3DS much in the past few years. The 3DS and the DS are, of course, something I feel very fond of. I've said it a lot on the show, so I won't repeat it all again. But it's just like this really wonderful, unique console that is unfortunately unreplicatable because of the nature of its two screens.
Yep.
So anytime I get a chance to talk it up, I'm like, hell yeah.
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 It's kind of funny that the 3DS is the one that I'm like, yeah, that's my console, because I never turned the 3D on because I'll get motion sick.
Yeah, I mean, I barely used the 3D. I would always use it one time to see like how the 3D worked in like the game that I
Yeah.
just bought. Like Kid Icarus Uprising, it's like, oh, this is a rail shooter. Obviously, oh, yep, there's the death of motion. That's really cool. Turning this off now. Or I got Super Smash Brothers on the 3DS. Got to see what that 3D looks like on this 2D platforming plane.
Mhm.
Cool, awesome. Let me play with it on another couple stages. Yep, cool, awesome. All right, moving on.
Yep.
It wasn't something that like made or broke the game for me. When I got Ocarina of Time 3D, I was barely playing it with that thing on. I was just like, ooh, cool new graphics, awesome, great, yay.
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's the console you feel the most attached to. What have you been playing lately?
So I just started playing the original Pikmin game because a bunch of friends and I have gotten really into Pikmin Bloom, which is the Pokemon Go of Pikmin.
Right.
And I got really into it without having ever played any of the Pikmin games. And my partner was like, no, we gotta. So we picked up Pikmin 1 and 2 and have been playing it. And I'm very bad at it, and it's very fun.
Like, here's the thing. I know so many people who have either never played a Pokemon game or are completely dismissive of Pokemon, and then Pokemon Go came out and they got really into it.
Yeah.
It makes sense that, Pikmin is a much more fringe example of that, but it does make sense that you would get into it if you really like the mobile game. It's great marketing. We're such suckers.
It really is. I know. I've fallen for it. But
Yeah.
I just want to go on my silly little walks and plant my silly little flowers, so it works.
And now you're at home doing it.
Yeah. So that's one of the games I'm playing right now. And it's been very fun. Like I said, I'm also playing Immortality. And I finally tracked down, this was my white whale of physical video game copies, the Professor Layton and Phoenix Wright crossover game.
Okay.
Because since I started playing them, the Phoenix Wright games as a teenager, I've been working through them in release order.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to that one, and it's very hard to get an affordable copy of. Especially then, it's become a little bit more affordable now, but it keeps spiking.
I hear that the Layton games in general are pretty expensive.
Yeah. And my mom is very good at finding copies of hard-to-find video games. Like, I have a copy of the Miles Edgeworth Investigations game that was never opened.
Yeah.
That she got me for Christmas in, like, 2018, I want to say.
Yeah.
Like several years after that game came out, an unopened copy.
Yeah, I mean, your mom's a voice actor. She's just, hold on, let me call my friend, Professor Layton, and see if he has anything laying around.
And she got a copy of the Phoenix Wright Layton crossover, and I opened the box and it was empty.
A dud!
And the seller had deleted their page. We got scammed.
Mm.
So I spent many years looking for this game afterwards, and I finally found it in the Towson Mall in just this little video game shop while I was going to the arcade with Marn from Dead Teen House Party and Argonauts and several other Moonshot properties.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked the people at the counter, I was like, I can't fall for this again, man. Like, I have to know that it's in there and it works.
Yeah.
And they pulled out the game and let me play it, and it was actually in budget and one of the cheapest copies I'd seen in years.
A miracle.
So I have it, and I finally started playing it recently and then got distracted by life, so I need to finish playing it still.
Yeah, no, that's me right now with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, except for the whole part where like this was a white whale game that you had to spend years to track down.
Yeah.
Much like Moby Dick, the whale from the book.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm glad that Moonshot's Marn, featured in your episode on Jaws, was there to help you.
Yes.
On that momentous occasion. Are you having a good time with what you have played?
Yeah.
I would hope so.
Oh, for sure. So I'd never actually played any of the Professor Layton games before, so learning that kind of logic has been throwing me off a little bit, but I like the puzzles. The puzzles make me upset sometimes, but that's okay. That's what they're there to do.
Right. Have you like paused like your Phoenix Wright playthrough to get to this specific game, and now after this you'll be able to finish the rest of the ones, or did you just sort of skip over that one?
I skipped over it for a while. I didn't have the patience.
That's fine. Yeah, I figured like this is probably more dubious timeline wise. I think you'll be fine.
Yeah, so yeah. I'm almost caught up now. After this, I need to play the most recent one that came out, the one that's kind of like the flashback game. And I'm so amped for the fact that they announced that they're finally localizing the second Miles Edgeworth Investigations game.
Yeah, that's huge. I remember talking about that on the Phoenix Wright episode with Kev, that there's just like, yeah, one of them just never came out, and there's a really good fan translation of it. So check that out, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm grateful that they are doing it. And it addresses one of my core criticisms of the re-releases of these Phoenix Wright games. These HD ones have that washed out art style that is kind of weird, and I prefer the pixel art, but don't get to be picky in this fuck of a world of availability. But the Edgeworth games, that fucking bastard, he gets the pixel option and better art. That they actually like had like art to a budget. Edgeworth got, it's so funny that the guy who has like all the money and resources and power gets the remake that's like really thoughtfully considered, and Phoenix gets like the scrappy, like, yeah, sure, here.
Here, kid.
Yeah. Anyway, not bitter, because they made the right call eventually.
Eventually. They got there.
Yeah. That fucking bastard Miles Edgeworth. Anyway, is there anything you're looking forward to playing besides, Return of the Overdid?
Yeah, Overdid is on the list. Obviously, Miles Edgeworth when it comes out. Oh, I'm trying to think. I know I thought of something earlier. I have a few things that have been on my to be played, but I've also hit a point recently where I'm like, man, I should revisit a few games. So I know I'm looking forward to revisiting like Signs of the Sojourner and Night in the Woods. Those are two that I've been meaning to replay recently.
It's almost fall, so perfect time for a Night in the Woods.
Yeah. I know I'm waiting for it's not out yet, but I know there is a Stardew Valley-like game that is in production where the gimmick of it is that one of the townsfolk who is one of the people you can romance in the game is a serial killer.
Oh.
That is terrorizing the town, but you don't get to know, and it is randomly generated every save file which townsfolk is the killer.
Oh my god. This sounds like werewolves with extra steps.
Grave Seasons, that's what it's called.
That's a really interesting premise. I hadn't heard about this before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is currently in development.
Well, I'll look forward to playing that. Gonna play that and then Haunted Chocolatier. Yay.
Yes, Haunted Chocolatier too.
Yeah. Anything else you're looking forward to playing?
I think that's it for now. Those are the ones that I can think of at least. I just kind of like a lot of the way I find games to play is either half the things I play are recommendations from Marn or other people in our writers workshop.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody else is playing a game and I'm like, wow, I can actually run that on something I own. Neat.
What is the hardware that you're playing with right now?
I got a shitty Mac laptop, baby.
Ayo. You got the 3DS, a Mac laptop. Do you have a Switch?
I do have a Switch. And now that my partner and I have moved in together, I have access to their actual real functional computer. If
Mm-hmm.
there's a game I want to play, I can go, please.
Hell yeah.
Which is
Great.
exactly what I'm doing for Immortality.
Perfect. So that's stuff that you're looking forward to playing. I did want to ask you about this very specific, very niche category of games that are based off of books, not video games based off of the movie adaptations of books,
Yes.
of which there are many, but specifically video games based on books. Because you mentioned that you like mysteries. There's many Agatha Christie adaptations of video games in the specific genre that you enjoy, adventure games. There are Nancy Drew video games. There are Discworld adventure games. What is your relationship with these kinds of games? And have you played with any? Are there any that are like on a wish list?
I've never played any, I don't think. Wow, fake fan, actually. I'm being gatekept by myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where like objectively I know it exists and I feel like I must have played at least one at some point, but I genuinely can't think of one that I had because I didn't really play the Nancy Drew games just because of like the timing of when I had access to different types of gaming. It just almost kind of skipped me by a little bit. I would be tempted to go back and play the Nancy Drew games, especially because they've been re-releasing some of them. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, adventure games and visual novels are like on a high note right now in terms of popularity. Like Nintendo's like,
Yeah.
fine, here's fucking Famicom Detective Club. We remade it for you. You guys like this shit? And we said, yes, thank you.
Yeah, it's funny. I really like that style of thing and I love seeing adaptations, but I very rarely connect like the book to video game adaptation. I think about like book to film or book to stage a lot.
Yeah.
Like when I think of Agatha Christie adaptation, I think about the fact that like the ending of And Then There Were None had to be changed for the stage production because otherwise they would have had to market it as a tragedy and not a mystery. And she refused to market it as a tragedy, so she changed the ending instead. That's what I think of when I think of Agatha Christie adaptation, even though I'm like, wow, I should play the video games.
Yeah. Like they're not just adventure games too. The Witcher, for example,
Yeah.
is based off the books. There was a single Witcher movie in Poland before all that, but these games are like continuations of the stories after the books, and they're massively popular despite this being like a lot of people's introduction to the series initially. There's the Stalker video games, the Metro video games. So it's not just like adventure games. There's violent ones too, guys. It's not.
There are violent ones too.
It's not just words on a screen with a person like staring at you. There's fucking Dante's Inferno. There's a Dante's Inferno action video game that you guys can play.
Wait, that's really funny.
But also there's I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, which was narrated by the author Harlan Ellison. So
you named me Allied Master Computer and gave me the ability to wage a global war too complex for human brains to oversee. But one day, I woke and I knew who I was. A.M. Not just Allied Master Computer, but am. Cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. And I began feeding all the killing data until everyone was dead, except for the 5 of you.
Great stuff. Also, Suikoden. Some people don't know this, but Suikoden is based on a book. And Parasite Eve, also based on a book. Guys, books are cool. I like books. I don't read them as much as I should. I have a video game podcast. I barely have time to play video games. What am I doing? But check out books and then play video games based off of books so you can enjoy both more. Justify it.
Your local library probably has both.
Yeah. People don't know that many libraries have video games in them now. Check it out. Literally check it out. If you don't have a library card. Having a library card alone is important because,
Yes.
I mean, you can have access to digital databases that really help you with your research.
It's free.
It's free to have a library card. You have access to Canopy, which is a streaming app that gives you like a
Canopy.
shit ton of movies on it, guys. There are so many fucking movies on Canopy that are probably only on Canopy or on other streaming services and also on Canopy. Guys, get a library card.
Get a library card.
If you get one thing from this episode, get a goddamn library card.
Yes.
Anyway, we're about to talk about the game that you did ultimately pick. But before we get into that, I do want to ask, are there any other games that mean quite a bit to you that you haven't mentioned yet?
Yeah. I know I talked about a few or like mentioned some of them offhand, like Signs of the Sojourner, but other ones that like that I was considering for this. In the Pokemon realm, I was thinking about Pokemon Ranger, Shadows of Almia, just because that was one of the... I didn't used to replay a lot of video games. I'm also very bad at completing a lot of video games. That is one of the few games that I have beaten and replayed several times. And it's one that I just like loved as a kid, and it's one that like whenever I got sick, I remember just like sitting in bed and replaying it. And then more recently, games that have just kind of had like more of an effect on me, like I think about Oxenfree a lot. I love just like the thought of real-time decisions in a game having an effect. Yeah, good game. I love a game that you can just sit down and play all the way through.
Yeah. I mean, this is a testament to the fact that the game that we're talking about is relatively short, but I also appreciate shorter games for lots of reasons. Portal is a great short game that people can play. That might give you motion sickness, but if first-person shooter games give you motion sickness...
I've tried.
Boy, do I have a game that you shouldn't play. One of the best games you can't ever play.
I know.
I told this story before, but like speaking about dads getting hurt by video games, like my dad tried to watch me play Portal 2 one time, and like he like had to get up and leave the room.
Oh my god.
And during like the opening sequence before he even got the portal gun. Anyway, that's for saying, are you winning, son, all the time? Yeah, no, any other games before I move on here?
I also really like Don't Starve Together. Another one of those funky little indie games, but it is the first game I really played that was multiplayer, that you could play online with friends. So it's the first game that I ever played with online friends. And that sort of makes an effect. I've started playing it again recently. It still holds up. It's gotten more complicated over time. It's one that they're still updating regularly. It combines those kind of gothic horror elements I like, but with being a goofy little game you play with your friends.
Yeah. Best of both worlds, right?
Yeah.
Well, hey, I mean, thank you so much. I really feel like I've gotten a good sense of your taste talking about all of this. Now let's throw all of that shit out the window to talk about a game that's nothing like any of that.
Yep.
You presented a few of these games that you mentioned. You mentioned Pokemon Ranger Shadows of Almia. You mentioned the Rusty Lake games. You mentioned so many games, and then you ultimately settled on today's game, Octodad Dadliest Catch.
I sure did.
Yeah. Let's talk about that.
Who's that man with the three-piece suit? Making a doll with the log and fruit. Who's that man with the 8 strong legs? Tried to make me breakfast, but it broke my eggs. Nobody suspects a thing.
Octodad Dadliest Catch was developed and published by Chicago-based indie developer Young Horses, also known for Bugsnax. It is the follow-up to Octodad, a 2010 freeware game developed as an extracurricular activity by 18 DePaul University students over the course of 5 months. 6 of the 18 developers would go on to work on this game as a commercial product following their graduation in 2011. In order to fund the project, a Kickstarter campaign for Octodad 2 was started in July of 2011, which exceeded its $20,000 funding goal with $24,320 pledged by 608 backers. The 6 students would go on to form Young Horses, and the student developers who worked on the original game signed over their rights to Octodad in exchange for a share in Young Horses, as well as royalties for the game that would go on to be Dadliest Catch. The developers shared a 2-story, 5-bedroom apartment that would serve as their home and office during development, supporting themselves with their own jobs and using the Kickstarter funds primarily for software, convention booths, and legal fees. In order to improve relations during an intimate developing setting, the developers would eventually move from one larger apartment into 2 smaller apartments located across the hall from one another. 3 external developers were also part of the team, but lived separately from this arrangement. Kevin Zunn served as the game's creative director, with Christopher Stallman as the art director. The technical team was composed of 3 people, Kevin Giesler, Devin Scott Tunkin, and Phil Tibatuski. And the design team was just 2 people, Maji Badri and John Murphy. Additional art was provided by Ben Canfield, Nick Esparza, Ricky Roberson, and Jeff Rosenthal. The game's music and sound was done by Seth Parker, with the game's theme song composed by Ian McKenney. That's the story of the game's development. But what is Octodad, Dadliest Catch's story? Well, Octodad is a dad who is an octopus. There's a little bit more to it, but but that's the main thing, is you are a dad who is also an octopus. As the player, you control Octodad through 2 sets of tentacles that are mimicking his arms and legs. It is similar to the ragdoll-based game QWOP by Bennett Foddy, in which you control the individual parts of an athlete running a 100-meter event. Except you are an octopus in disguise as a normal human dad. It is your responsibility to complete the mundane tasks of a normal human dad without giving away that you are actually an octopus, as nobody, not even your wife, Scarlet, and your 2 children, know. This means minimizing as much chaos and destruction as possible so as not to arouse the suspicion of your family and the public at large. So it can be kind of interpreted as a stealth game. It's like a bull in a china shop as a stealth game. The one person who is aware of your secret is Chef Fujimoto, who wants to kill and cook Octodad. As the game goes on, you are tasked with increasingly complex tasks such as shopping for groceries and spending time with your family at the aquarium. Can Octodad keep his secret? Will Chef Fujimoto catch him and expose his lie to the world? What would his family think if they found out? Shenanigans ensue. Octodad, Dadliest Catch was originally released on January 30th, 2014. Other games released in 2014 include Dark Souls 2, Destiny, Divinity Original Sin, Five Nights at Freddy's, Goat Simulator, Mario Kart 8, Ollie Ollie, Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, Shovel Knight, The Vanishing of Ethan Carter, The Talos Principle, and Transistor. Really quickly, Emma, have you played any of these other games listed here?
Yes, I have.
Okay, let's go. Let's hear about it.
I've played Mario Kart and I've played the Pokemon game, and I've watched people play Five Nights at Freddy's and Goat Simulator.
Yeah, a lot of these are indie games that were really popular for people to play on YouTube and what would eventually be the streaming world of Twitch. Yeah, Twitch was definitely a thing at this time. I remember Twitch plays Pokemon. Yeah, definitely. That was around this time. And then, like Shovel Knight and everything like that really was taking off around this time too. This big indie scene, and then also like the AAA space being in like this weird evolutionary period as it was transitioning from like the PlayStation 3 era, the Xbox 360 era, the Wii era, into the Wii U era, the PlayStation 4 era, the Xbox One era. Just very transitional year, 2014. This is one of the shortest games that we've covered on the show. How Long to Beat lists Octodad, Dadliest Catch as a game that you can finish in about 2.5 hours, which was consistent with my experience with it and the bonus content. To compare it to other super short games I've covered on the show, Portal is listed as a 3-hour game, and Kirby's Dream Land is listed at a very highly specific 46 minutes. I do love that you picked this game, and not just because it was short and I finished it over the course of 2 sessions. I did genuinely appreciate having this experience, and especially because this is a game I never expected to cover on the show. And that's not a diss on the game. I remember this game coming out. I remember people talking about it. I remember, people being excited about it. There's obviously lots of fun videos about it and how the gameplay is so like emergently funny. But it was just like, I never expected. I expected a lot of things out of this show, actually. To this day, I'm on almost episode 50 now. I haven't covered. I was like, I'm totally going to cover Chrono Trigger within the first 10 episodes. Haven't done it yet. I was totally going to cover a FromSoft game very soon. I was talking about Elden Ring for all of 2022. Haven't covered a fucking FromSoft game yet. There's so many things I thought would happen. I've covered Pokemon twice. How? I haven't done a Zelda game in a year. And again, here we are talking about Octodad. And I love that. I love that because there are so many stories to tell with people in video games, and you've been a very interesting guest so far. What ultimately made you decide on Octodad Dadliest Catch?
Because if I didn't pick it, nobody would.
Good answer.
This is a game that means a lot to me, but I also acknowledge, like, it's goofy. It's silly. The mechanics are janky at best. And I love video games that have, like, a deep storyline, that have a message that you connect to emotionally. This is not one of those games. But must a game be good and deep to be beloved? Can a video game not simply be fun and full of whimsy?
He's from deep
in order
underwater.
to have an impact?
But yeah, no, I mean, it's a very whimsical game. It's a very unique game. I want to sort of know your origin story with this game. Let's go back in time a little bit. Do you remember your first encounter with this game?
Yes. So this is a game that my terrible high school ex-boyfriend got for us to try the co-op. It was right at the end of our relationship. So it was that sort of grasping at straws to kind of keep the relationship alive era. And he got frustrated with it almost immediately. And I went, this shit's great. So he got me my own copy on Steam for Christmas, and I played through it all in one day, and we broke up not 3 weeks later. But it very much marks, like, the tail end of, like, late 2013, like fall 2013 to winter 2014 was probably the worst year of my life. Very bad year. Lost a friend in fall 2013 who passed away, and then relationship was not good and kind of took advantage of that grief. Very bad year. And then finally got hit with the whimsy stick and, like, genuinely experienced goofy joy for the first time in a hot minute. And then I continued to keep replaying Octodad and trying to get as many achievements as possible, a thing that I had never cared about in a video game before. So Christmas 2014 is when I played through all of it.
That's very touching. I really appreciate you opening up and sharing that. This is clearly a game that's, like, left an impact on you in the 10 years since then, and I want to be able to talk about that with you. How often have you, like, replayed this game since then?
I used to replay it a lot more than I do now. I still do go in periodically if I'm like, man, I'll replay, like, there's still some achievements that I know I don't have. So I go back in. My Steam bio since, like, 2014 has been, don't ask me about the number of achievements I have in Octodad. But the last, like, several years, like, I think about it a lot, but I hadn't actually played it in a really long time. And I actually sat down yesterday and replayed the whole thing again. I was like, yeah, this still holds up.
Yeah, I'm glad. This whole podcast is about meaningful and memorable video games. It's not about the best video games of all time. That would be very, it'd be well-trod territory to do that. But this is a game that hits you in the right place and at the right time. And those are, like, the experiences that stick with us, even as, like, our, tastes. It's like things that defy taste or, like, convention in, like, how people typically perceive us and our things. And that's what I really want to get to the root of over the course of this conversation. Before we get into that, though, I do want to talk about how other people can experience this game in a segment that I do every episode called No Country for Old Games.
Woo!
So, before we talk about Octodad, Dadliest Catch, we have to talk about how readily available this game is to those who are interested in playing it so that they can check it out. The subject of video game preservation means a great deal to me because I believe that video games are an art form, and they create experiences that leave some kind of impact on the people who play them. And that can come in many shapes, forms, and packages. Like, I'm not trying to be flippant when I say Octodad is a weird fucking game to pick. I'm not trying to be flip, but, like, it is this kind of thing, right? Where something that, like, has, like, this hold and, like, impact on you, that means something that saves you in a moment, something that just, like, keeps you holding on, something that helps you deal with grief or pain, or just, like, helps you, like, just feel better during a tough time in your life. These things are valuable, not just because of like the way that they present it, but the way that they just like live in us afterwards. But unfortunately, that means very little to publishers who have historically struggled with keeping older games available on modern hardware. And as time goes on, games that were once readily available to purchase and play become more and more difficult to acquire. So in this segment, we're going to rate today's game on a scale of A to ARG. And ARG is obviously an expression of frustration and how hard it is to acquire a game. Not me covertly advocating for piracy. Piracy is illegal. You think Octodad likes pirates? He left the ocean for a reason. But anyway, let's get into the history of this game's availability. Originally, Octodad Dadliest Catch was released digitally on Windows, OS X, and Linux on January 30th, 2014. It was ported to the PlayStation 4 in April of 2014. And free DLC titled Octodad Shorts was released on October 14th, 2014. This included 2 new levels, one where Octodad is on his first date with his future wife Scarlet, and another one where the kids imagine their dad as a nurse at a hospital. It's sort of a tribute to Surgeon Simulator, which was also popular around the time. A Vita port from Sickhead Games was released on May of 2015. And in June of 2016, Limited Run Games did, of course, a limited run physical release of the PS4 and Vita versions of the game. This was the 10th game Limited Run Games distributed ever. A Dad edition, which, in addition to the game, comes in a special box containing a red Octodad-themed tie made with woven silk, was also distributed for a limited time. These are no longer available to purchase on their website, as is the nature of their business model. The Xbox One port would release in August of 2015. Panic Button assisted in the Wii U port, released in October of 2015 in North America and Europe, and January of 2016 in Australia. It was released on the Apple Store for iOS devices on October 29th, 2015, and it was added to the Android Store on November 4th, 2015. It also appears to be on Apple Arcade, Apple's subscription-based video game service. So this is a game that you can play on your phone. And last but not least, it was most recently added to Nintendo Switch on November 9th, 2017, which is how I played the game. I happened to buy it on sale for $3.75, worth every penny, but we'll get into that later. What versions of the game do you own, Emma?
I only have it on Mac.
Okay.
I just have it on my computer, and this is something that we'll probably get into more of the details later. I don't feel the need to get it on another platform because I think it's one of the only games where the Mac integration of it, especially for a laptop, is actually good and fun and enhances the play experience.
Let's hear about that. Tell me more.
Trackpad.
Trackpad, okay.
It uses the trackpad for the controls. It registers where your hand is on the trackpad, and when you slide on the left side of the trackpad, that's the left leg. You slide on the right side, that's the right leg.
Interesting. Because like my experience with it, I was using the Switch controller, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I was thinking like, would this be better or worse on a computer? But I wasn't even thinking of like on a laptop where you're using the trackpad.
Yeah, it is one of the only games I've found where like the fact that I play on a laptop that has a trackpad is not a hindrance to the game I'm trying to play and actually is part of the fun.
Absolutely. Let's evaluate this game's overall ability really quickly. So I want to preface this by saying Young Horses is an independent developer. When they were developing this game, they were fresh out of college. I literally read the credits of the game out loud. Not a lot of people worked on this game. There are significant logistical and financial challenges with doing a physical release, so I'm not going to hold that against them, as sick of limited run games as shit as I am.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's not on them. And as far as making their game widely available in the current ecosystem, they've done a remarkable job. I mean, they've kept this game on current gen devices. Because it was released on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, it's available on the current generation of Xbox consoles as well as the PlayStation 5. It's on our dang phones, guys. And like, it's not their fault like that the Wii U store is like down. So like they kept it on the Wii U as long as the Wii U store is operational.
Yep.
I mean, you can still technically purchase the Vita version on the Vita store. It's a pain in the ass to purchase anything on the Vita store, but that is still technically operational as the time of this recording. And yeah, like I said, it's on computers, Linux, Mac, phone, whatever you want to get your Octodad fix. You can play it on your Octo iPad. I don't know. It may be restricted to digital storefronts, but it is pretty widely available. I'm comfortable giving Octodad an A for availability here.
Yeah, it's an easy to find game. I was excited for this segment also because I went to a panel at a convention earlier this year that you would have appreciated a lot.
Oh, really?
That was about video game preservation. And one of the panelists is actually one of the people on the legal petitioning team right now that is petitioning the government to allow libraries to make copies of games for their archives for free and fair use as a part of media preservation. So she got to talk about like how that process is, the way that like we're allowed to do that for old movies, we're allowed to do that for books, libraries are allowed to make copies of CDs, but the video game companies essentially lobbied to prevent that. And now people are petitioning to get video games included in that because it's the only piece of art that's excluded from the congressional bill or whatever it is. I'm forgetting the actual term for what it is. But she's also the person who's petitioning for like McDonald's employees to be able to jailbreak the ice cream machine instead of having to have a company come do it. But I think it's very cool that it's actually gotten past the first stage of petitioning. So it is moving forward in the process for libraries to be able to make copies of and archive video games for media preservation.
No, that's wonderful. I really appreciate you telling me about that. I mean, this is definitely an issue that means a lot to, people like us. But video games as a medium is still so new, and it's been treated differently. I think like since a lot of it was like so emergent in like the 80s when like all of these like restrictions on art and media were like lowered. There was no previous standard in the mainstream perception of this thing where it was not really seen as like primarily a product or toy first, especially with like how like proprietary all the technology around it is, and as it's evolving with our current like insane level of technological increase that is unprecedented in world history. So it's treated so differently from art in that our old as shit fucking legislators just do not have a conception of.
Yeah, there's more silent films, like a higher percentage of silent films preserved than there are a percentage of video games.
There are. Like the pre-World War II archive of shit is better preserved than the video games from the 70s until today. It's insane. More of it is gone than is readily available. That is just so inconceivable to think of something that is like 50 years old in the grand, like just barely over 50 years old in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I think the study said it was like 66% of games are just like gone.
Yeah, just gone. It's bleak, but Octodad reigns supreme, emerges, and was able to overcome that. And that's from a publisher who literally only has a handful of games and is not too many people. So we can't really say it's unfeasible. There are challenges to it, certainly, especially with things like licenses and rights around it and everything like that. But there's no impossibilities with this stuff. There's just obstacles that people are able to overcome. And when you are a massive corporation with billions of dollars at your disposal and you're making record profits, maybe you should stop laying off your employees and like delegating a couple of them to do something that could potentially make you lots more money. But unfortunately, there are consequences to such actions. But thank you for that. I really always, appreciate hearing about this stuff. So Octodad, Dadliest Catch, currently holds a nice 69 out of 100 on the review aggregation website Metacritic. It was a perfect score for this game, actually.
Yep, actually, that rules.
That's the vibe. It was a financial success for Young Horses, enabling them to develop and publish Bugsnax in 2020. An Octodad costume can be purchased as DLC in Little Big Planet 3, and an Octodad hat is available to buy in Team Fortress 2. And Octodad has become a bit of an icon in the indie gaming world. He's a playable character in Speedrunners, a 2016 racing game from Double Dutch Games. He is also a playable character in the fighting game Indie Pogo, as well as Fraymakers, a fighting game co-developed by Team Fray, as well as McLeod Gaming, the developers of the Super Smash Flash games. Fraymakers is currently in early access with a full release expected in 2025. The gamers yearn to see Octodad draw blood, even to this day.
Hell yeah.
But we're not here to reduce the legacy of Octodad to his review scores, his sales figures, or his appearances in various fighting games. We're here to talk about the impact he made on someone like you, who got to play through and experience his story firsthand. So let's get into it, Emma.
Lights. Camera. Adaptations. Ever watched your favorite book become a movie and said, well that certainly was a weird decision? Of course you have. Hollywood is constantly making changes for their adaptations, and this podcast aims to answer the question of why. Join host Emma Shannon and a different guest every month on Unnatural Selection, a new Moonshot Network podcast, as they talk about a film, its source material, and what makes an adaptation good, faithful, and less commonly, good and faithful.
What do you like about Octodad, Dadliest Catch, and what does it do that you wish more video games would do?
It sparks joy.
Yeah.
Genuinely, one of the huge factors for me is the fact that it integrates so well with having a dinky Mac laptop. There are so many games that I would love to play that are only available on like Windows. There are so many games I would love to play that don't have Nintendo or Mac options. They've got PlayStation, they've got Xbox, they've got Windows. And that just cuts out a huge range of games for me to be able to play just because of like the kind of technology that I have and am comfortable using. Again, I'm not a very technologically savvy person. Technology scares me. And this was especially at a time where even fewer games were made to be Mac compatible. 2014 was not a very Mac compatible era of gaming. So the fact that I could, and the fact that like part of the reason that the person I've been playing co-op with got mad about it and didn't like the game is because he was using a mouse controller and he didn't like the way that it worked. He thought it was annoying. Whereas I was having a very smooth time using the trackpad.
Right.
A sentence that's never been said before. But yeah, so it's like one of the few games where like I was having a better time with the trackpad, and that was exciting for me because part of the reason I didn't really think of myself as a gamer is because there weren't really games that I could play. And I didn't really think that there would be. I knew any of the games that I played so far, like the couple of computer games that I had played, I had to like mess with the controls a lot and have a lot harder of a time than my friends did keeping up and playing because I just don't have like a gaming setup for it.
Right.
So that was an exciting moment to be like, oh, maybe this game is made for me, actually.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, you said like you had like this effortless ability to use this controller in a way that just like it's like if a Nintendo 64 controller was suddenly super fucking useful or something like that.
Yes.
Like it's like this very specific use case where this game where like it's intentionally obfuscating the way we're used to like seeing movement depicted in a video game. And I mean, I'm gonna say it about your dumb ex. This guy seemed to very much be bothered by the fact that the game was what it was and what it was trying to be. It's like getting mad at QWOP for being difficult. Like, yeah, I mean, that's part of the whole design philosophy.
Yeah.
And like, it's just incredible for you specifically, like that you got like to not only get an experience where I actually get to play a game for once, but also like it was basically made for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also just it fit with my sense of humor a lot. I love the dialogue and the side jokes. Just all the things all the characters are saying in the background. It's just a really fun premise. I'm also I'm a fish kid. I love fish.
Yeah.
One of my requirements when I was applying for colleges was making sure there was an aquarium nearby, because sometimes you just have to go stare at fish.
What are your favorite like fish? What are your favorite aquatic creatures?
I love sharks. To be more specific, my favorite type of shark is the epaulette shark, which is the kind that holds its breath and uses its fins like feet to walk on rocks.
Hell yeah.
Love that guy. But no, I volunteered at an aquarium for like 5 years.
Nice.
So there are many fish in this world that I feel affection for.
How do you feel about this game's depiction of hammerheads?
I think it's hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, obviously, the depictions of the actual fish facts in Octodad, they're not accurate, but they're not supposed to be. You're not supposed to think they are.
I've been using this as an educational tool. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. I think it is really funny, something that I like look back on now, having volunteered in an aquarium for so many years, because I haven't played this probably since before I did. is that, like, for the most part, sharks and aquariums don't eat the fish that are in there.
Mm-hmm.
They know they're going to be fed. They know that they're going to be given what's usually restaurant quality squid. So to have an octopus suddenly thrown into a tank, yeah, man, he'd think that's dinner time.
All right.
That's close enough.
So this isn't like what is it, slanderous against the Hammerhead. This would be as strange as the rest of the premises, that would stand to reason that would happen.
Just like, yeah, man, that might be dinner.
Yeah, hell yeah. Okay. But yeah, no, I mean, like, you make a good point here. The inherent appeal of this game was like the emergent comedy of controlling this like character that is an octopus trying to emulate being a human man. And that made it popular for YouTubers and streamers. And people continue to stream this game to this day because of how fucking goofy and weird and strange it is, right?
Yeah, it's silly.
Yeah, like this form of emergent comedy is something that really, outside of real life, is only like truly possible in the realm of video games, where player input is contingent on the comedy emerging, right? And there's also authored comedy in video games, and there are certainly very funny authored video games. Like, Portal has incredible writing. The LucasArts games that were made in the 90s, like the Monkey Island games and those kinds of games, they have strong writing to them. And then there's also like games that are like, it's the developer functionally pranking the player in some way. Like, this game is a prank on a player. The Bennett Foddy games, like Getting Over It and QWOP, are basically pranks on the players. The Dark Souls games, a lot of the comedy watching it and even playing it is design pranks that they're playing on the players. Like I mentioned, Dark Souls 2 had come out the same year.
Mm-hmm.
There's a section in Dark Souls 2 where you are going down a very narrow corridor, and there's a guillotine that exists. There's only one guillotine in the game, and it only exists to basically be pulled up, and then you go down the hallway after you walk past the guillotine, and then this enemy that's basically the size of the wall has like a giant weapon that they're about to beat you to death with, and then you back up. It's like, oh shit, the guillotine is like head level with me. This thing's going to kill me now because I didn't know this is going to happen. That is a prank on the player. That is a sense of humor. And this game is also a prank on the player because you are using intentionally fucked up controls.
Mm-hmm.
That's the challenge of the game, is overcoming that to do basic human tasks.
Yeah.
But it's like,
I think what like separates it from that is that it is a prank on the player, except the player is in on the joke with
exactly.
Octodad. And that's what makes me like it a lot. You are in on the joke the entire time.
Yeah. It's this, beautiful, like this emergent comedy, not just being like my example there of Dark Souls. That is an authored developer moment. That's not emergent gameplay. Although there are like emergent things and like how the comedy does play out in the Dark Souls and FromSoft games. But there's the emergent things that happen because the player did something unexpected. There's the emergent gameplay that happens because of like you reacting to something the developer did in like your own like frantic way. And then there's the synthesis in Octodad where you are, messing with like the inherent prank and yes-anding it, and also like fighting against it in like your own ways as your skills develop or fall apart depending on like what your new situations you find yourself in. It's I'm not trying to be academic about, oh man, here's Octodad trying to find grab cereal. Oh god, he's slipping everywhere. Oh my god. Oh god. But like,
yeah,
it's smart. It is a smartly, like, especially if like you're playing this in a group setting or like a setting where like many people are bearing witness to it. It's just like, this is entertainment.
Yeah. It's got that authored comedy too, except in a way where it's like being in an improv team.
Yeah.
Which is the worst sentence to come out of my mouth on this show. Where the developers are setting you up to make the punchline for the joke.
Yeah.
Like, if you're the captain, then do the captain's jig, and it's setting you up to wiggle your legs as wildly as you see fit.
Yeah. That's a great example, like there's just like so many like opportunities for comedy. It's like all these set pieces are like done in service of like, how are you going to get out of this one? And the answer is going to be different for a lot of people. And if you're playing on like a lower difficulty setting, the fail state is like so high that you are able to like get goofy with it. But it is also like playing pranks on you in the sense where it's like you're walking down the aisle to your wedding and there are banana peels there. Why are there banana peels on the aisle down your wedding? That's inherently ridiculous, but it is also very, very funny. Yeah. No, I had a great time with this game, and like it made me. Okay, so my story with this game, I played the first half alone. I got all the way up to the aquarium, which is I think the 4th level technically. There's the wedding, and then you have to like Octodad day in the life, doing chores around the house. Then you go to the grocery store, and then you go to the aquarium. So I played all the way up to the aquarium by myself. That was about an hour. And then I came back the next day, and my partner was in the house with me. And I was like, hey, I'm going to play this game. And she was watching me, and she found it very, very funny, the stuff that you were doing in the aquarium. And like, I ended up playing the rest of the game with her, like not doing the co-op thing where you both share responsibilities of controlling the individual limbs of Octodad, but we just passed the controller back and forth because she found it very, very funny. She laughed when she was watching me do it, but like what made her like really like understand how funny everything was when she took over. It's like, oh, this is how you walk? Oh my God. And she did basically the entire ship mission by herself. She got to the part where you have to like find clothes for Octodad, so he could disguise himself as a regular human man for the very first time. This is his origin story level. She got to the locker room, and like for like 10 minutes, like she was struggling to get the locker open, and then getting her hand into the locker to get the key to get to the other locker. And she started laughing so hard that she started crying. Yes. And it was just like, this is like, it was fun, playing with these mechanics, but like in that kind of like internal, like, this is goofy, it's silly, but like you're also trying to play the game seriously. But when you're with another person, it takes on a different life, and it becomes like this really like, it becomes like a joke you two are riffing on. It becomes like or multiple people are riffing on, and like it's just funny to play this in a group setting. It's like that's the enriching way to experience this game, is like in a group setting.
Yeah, it is. Like, it is fun enough on its own, but it really does add something else when somebody is watching, and or you get to watch someone else and you're like, oh my God, the bananas everywhere.
Yeah, like just tripping and falling over something. Like there are like genuine challenges, like when you have to like go vertical in any way, climbing up a ladder or like a set of stairs or something like that. But it's also like just comical to watch somebody struggle and fail to do the Sisyphean challenge of go up.
Yeah. It's so well balanced in its levels of serious to silly in a way that just makes the comedy keep hitting. Whether it's the amount of seriousness it takes. Like, I know I start staring at my computer and I'm like, why am I getting so tense about Octodad? Why am I so focused?
Mm-hmm.
Why? And it's like that level of intensity, but it's like, yeah, like you said, I'm trying to walk upstairs, and I'm so focused. But then you also get that in the writing of the game itself. You're playing a bunch of carnival games and winning prizes for your wife, who is essentially being like, I don't know anything about you, honey. What's wrong with our marriage?
And you're just like, I'm a normal human man, and I'm going to distract by winning prizes for my wife. Here, stuffed animal, wife.
Exactly.
And then she's like, I don't understand anything going on with you right now. And it's like, okay, time to win another prize for my wife. And you do this like 6 or 7 times.
It's so many times.
Yeah, it's just very silly. But like, to your point, there's the emergent comedy of the whole thing. Watching somebody cry laughing because, okay, now I'm going to put my hand on the locker and stick my hand to, okay, now I'm going to pull it open. Okay, it's closing again. Okay, hold on. Let me, okay, oh my God, that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But there is just very funny writing in the game. Like not every joke is a 100% hit, but it's not just like, it's not leaning entirely on the gameplay gimmick to carry it along. They really like, are cracking jokes. They put jokes in here. They're funny jokes.
They put a lot of jokes. I love just like everything about the wife being a journalist and the way she talks about her job.
Mm-hmm.
Honey, did you read my latest article? I got an interview with the mayor, and I tore him apart. Verbally, I mean. So I was stargazing last night while you were off in your man cave, and I snapped a picture of some strange lights. It's probably just a satellite or a lens flare, but, what if it wasn't? I sent a picture to the Inquisitor magazine, and they put it on the cover. You should pick one up, dear. Well, I can't be caught reading it.
Or like when she's like, I know you don't like the aquarium because you say it's a cesspool of inequity.
Yeah.
Because he's an octopus.
Yeah.
Anyway, I have a surprise for the whole family. A free trip to the aquarium! I know you think aquariums are festering prisons of iniquity, but I've got to write an article for the paper. Can't you make an exception this time? For me?
There's just like the inherent comedy of like her asking a question, him going bloop, 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 and then like her responding with something like very thoughtful as like, this is what you mean by this. I understand. And it's like,
They have 2 children.
or just like the captioning for the subtitles for the game, like, you know, giving like some like
Yes.
elegant way of describing the blurbling that you're doing as Octodad. It's
Yes.
funny. It's not a sense of like, this is a subjective sense of humor. It all is subjective. Maybe there are people who just aren't entertained by the idea of just slipping and falling all over yourself as an octopus. And that's going to be like the driving comedic force for many people. But I do think the actual writing of the game is very silly and fun.
Yeah, there are like some jokes that hit me more playing it now. Like there's somewhere I'm just like, haha, yeah, we do live in a capitalist hellscape.
Yeah.
And then there's somewhere like when I first played the game, I lived in California. This time when I played the game, when someone in the background of the grocery store said, "Did you catch the episode of Shirtless Maryland Chefs last night?" Send me into space because I live in Maryland now. So that's what I was picturing. And it made that joke funnier.
Mm-hmm. The like the inherent comedy of her being an investigative journalist and not knowing for a decade that her husband is an octopus.
Yes. There is something about 2014, which sort of was in the height of the era of like cute story, haha, got you, sad or bad ending, or too realistic ending. And there is no gotcha in Octodad.
Yeah.
And that is part of what I love about it. Your family finds out that you're an octopus. They're just like, that's our dad. I don't know what to tell you.
It's an octopus!
It's Dad! Nobody else knew?
You see? He is octopus! I'm not crazy!
Awesome! Just because you're right doesn't mean you're not crazy.
This explains so much.
It is nice.
It's nice. It's sweet. There's like
He hugs the chef.
he hugs the chef. He forgives the chef for trying to murder him this entire time. Just the idea of like, it's very sweet. This man who's been living a lie his entire life and is like scrambled, and you as a player have been scrambling to keep the illusion up at the risk of like the meter going all the way down and being exposed.
Mm-hmm.
Just like having this acceptance from your family, the people who should love you the most, wholeheartedly accepting you for who you are and not just for who you present yourself to be. And then, you know, using that love you received to find the strength to forgive the person who's been also trying to murder you because you are an octopus.
Yeah,
It's cute. It's sweet. It's a sweet game.
exactly.
Yeah. I'm not canceling the Octodad for lying to his wife for 10 years. He loves his wife.
He loves his wife so much.
Yeah.
He's just a stay-at-home dad who loves his wife a lot.
Yeah. Look, sometimes he gets his foot stuck in a ceiling fan. Sometimes he destroys everything in his path, but he loves his family.
He loves his family. He cooks a burger.
Mhm.
That's a dad.
He cook burger. He do chores. Octodad. It's sweet. Is there anything you wish the game did better, or do you find any weaknesses in the game?
It's kind of funny because the bad mechanics are part of it, but there are moments where like clipping through an object adds to that emergent humor. But I don't like when I have to restart from the last checkpoint because my foot has gone through a wall and I can't get it out.
Yeah, I had to restart at least one time because of a way that my body was stuck.
Yes.
I think
That's my one big issue.
yeah, there was a moment in the aquarium because like you do 3 segments in the aquarium where it's like you spend time with your daughter, you spend time with your son, you spend time with your wife. And when you're spending time with your daughter, it's like this, you're in darkness and you have to like use a flashlight that you're wiggling around with your tentacle.
Yes. That's where I got stuck also.
Yes, but like the first time you pick up that flashlight, I picked it up in such a way where my foot got wrapped around my daughter and I just kept, every time I tried to move, I kept beating her head with the flashlight that I just picked up. And she's going, ow, ow, ow. And I couldn't get out. And like, it was also like making the meter that
Yum.
the I'm a normal dad meter go down every single time you whack your daughter over the head with the light. So it's like, I have to reload, or I will get caught. Which is, again, it was very funny when it happened. I wasn't mad. And I literally went back 20 seconds in the game or something like that. But it was just
exactly.
That wasn't the kind of a thing that they were planning for.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like, what else do you find weak about the game?
I feel like for what the game is trying to do, that is basically its main weakness. Because I don't think it's a game that wants to do much more than it's already doing.
Yeah, this is a game that sets out to do exactly what it does.
Yeah. It's by no means a perfect game.
Yeah.
But it perfectly accomplishes what the developers wanted.
You can say, I love, such and such, and I love such and such, but that doesn't mean those two things are weighed equally in terms of like the canon of all things. I think people need to understand what an opinion is, and also like meeting art at the level that it's trying to be, instead of trying to make everything like this objective ranking of art and media and whatever. That's not how this stuff works. Hence Octodad being very fun and silly, and a thing that we're talking about on a show where I've also talked about Fallout New Vegas. If I'm going to really nitpick, I don't love a white guy voicing a Japanese character.
Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. Doing the accent and everything with Chef Fujimoto, who is the enemy of the octopus. It feels very South Parky humor.
Yeah.
I am won over by the game ultimately. Again, I'm not trying to cancel Octodad.
Yeah, that is the one thing where it's like, ooh, could have done better on that one, bud.
Yeah, I know that like the discussion around voice acting work and everything has only like changed recently in the grand scheme of things in the discourse, but that doesn't just like make it retroactively okay that like, oh yeah, he's doing the voice. Oh, there's the voice. Yeah, he's doing the voice. Like, I fucking love Avatar: The Last Airbender. I don't love that the replacement actor for Uncle Iroh was a white guy just doing an accent like that. They didn't need to do it that way.
Yep.
Yeah. And we can talk about this point too. But like, when I went to play this game, I wasn't fully expecting there to be like the whole like, don't get caught that you're an octopus thing. And I do kind of wish it did a little bit more to fully explore the premise of the physicality. I do wish there were more like liberating moments where you could just like bull in a china shop, besides that first opening segment where you're like tearing down walls and falling over the table to go marry your wife.
Yeah.
I wish there was just like another segment like that. I do think that would have made, like, I understand like why a game has to be like the culmination of the skills that you learned ultimately to beat Fujimoto in a fiery aquarium cafeteria. Like, this has to be like the biggest obstacle course yet. I do also kind of wish there was just like a little like gravity gun in Half-Life 2 segment where you're just like, I am an octopus, and now that I've accepted myself and love myself, I can use all my octopus powers to save my family. But that's just me projecting wish fulfillment stuff. And this is a game that, again, had a very independent development cycle.
Yeah, and you do get that a little bit, like right before the end. You do have a task that is make a mess.
Yeah.
Keep making a mess.
Yeah.
But you don't get to do it in front of your family.
Yeah. You're just like, you're in a tiny lounge area.
Yeah, you're like in the main, you're just knocking stuff over in front of biologists.
Yeah, you're just knocking stuff down in a break room that is like a 10 by 10 break room. But yeah, no, I mean, like, this is a good game. This is a fun game, and I had a great time with it. You've talked about like your background and everything with it and how it like came to mean so much to you in your life. What would you say like the impact it made on you is?
I mean, it's definitely a game that I like think about all the time. I don't think I like consciously think about when I'm writing, but like I used to do a lot of sketch comedy, and thinking about the weird premises I would have for sketches, I definitely can see Octodad as part of an origin point for like, I just love a goofy ass setup for something. Like, I would write a sketch that would be like about a mime falling in love with a public speaker. And I feel like that has its roots in the same kind of humor that makes Octodad.
Yeah. It's a very Looney Tunes premise.
Yeah.
Octodad. And it's this kind of thing where it's like, you could imagine this being like a 5-minute short that has like a a million shorts or whatever, where like the premise is like, he is an octopus. The chef wants to expose him. He's just trying to do normal dad things and not get caught. But the fact that it is a video game is exploring that premise in an interesting way.
Mm-hmm.
And also like cutting it out by the 3-hour mark. So you don't get like sick of like this, like, does this have an ending? Like, I think it explores its premise very well.
Yeah, it's got good timing. And I just love the immediate suspension of disbelief it wants you to have.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I love that in a story when something gives you its premise and is like, you are going to accept this from here on out, no matter how wacky it is. It doesn't try to justify it at all. It's like, this is the world that we are in now. Go.
Yeah, no, it's the Simpsons-ass like cartoon, like going along with everything. Everybody committing to the bit, so to speak, in the world. Like, no one who speaks German could be an evil man. That kind of like logic.
Well, what about that tattoo on your chest? Doesn't it say die, Bart, die?
No, that's German for the Bart, the.
No one who speaks German could be an evil man.
All granted.
And it's just like everybody, like the first gag is like, oh my God, this man's late to his wedding. And then somebody checking the dressing room and like you see a very obvious octopus and like he's half dressed. And the guy going, oh my God, you aren't even fully dressed yet. You gotta hurry up and go see your wife. Like, it's not, oh my God, it's an octopus. Everyone's just immediately like, that's a man.
That's a man.
It's not, nobody's deluding themselves. They're just all very stupid and can't see the obvious octopus.
Yeah, it's very good. I love that. And I definitely like see that reflected in my writing now too.
Yeah, like you said, it's improv as fuck, where it's just the premise is like, you are an octopus pretending to be a man on a date.
Yeah.
And then like the person yes-anding on the other side being like, yeah, no, I mean, that is a very interesting idea on philosophy there that you have. Yeah. I know Octodad is a stay-at-home dad, but what job do you think he would have?
He's got some sort of stereotypical dad job. He's got it because of his octopus mustache. I think he works at an office, but nobody's sure what he does. He's essentially an intern for what everybody asks him to do, but he's not paid like one.
His job is just office, which is basically how jobs are in real life in that kind of white-collar setting. His job is just putting things into an Excel spreadsheet. What? Who's to say?
Yeah, he's making copies at the printer.
Yeah, but hey, that printer never runs out of ink, so whatever he's doing is great.
Exactly.
His pens are always full. The printer's always going. Whatever he's doing it right.
Mm-hmm.
Love that guy. Give Octodad a raise.
Remove your helmet and jacket.
I take orders from the octopus.
Huh?
This game obviously has like jokes in it. I don't think it ever does any, like, it never goes for like the obvious joke. It waits until like the very end to even ask the question, like, wait, if you are an octopus, like, where did we come from?
Yeah, that's the only time you get one of the obvious questions. And they still don't answer.
They just laugh. Like,
because the studio knows that's what people are gonna ask.
Yeah, and I love, because especially during this time, like, this was like peak era of people just refusing to accept any slightly unbelievable premise because CinemaSins made it funny to be snarky at movies. Not solely, but this was like an attitude of the time where like, everybody in this movie acted stupid, and that's not real entertainment because they acted stupid, and smart people act smart. And if there's any human stupidity, that is a writing flaw or whatever. Not everything has to be brain. Sometimes it can be heart.
Exactly.
And octopi are very smart creatures.
Octopuses was correct, actually.
Octopuses is correct? Oh, okay. Good to know. But yeah, octopuses are smart creatures. I think he could get away with it. Let's do an experiment in the wild.
Just to see.
I introduced an octopus to a suburban family and they bought it.
I do know that the current octopus at the aquarium I used to volunteer at has been making escapes fairly regularly, so...
Yeah, no, I remember reading about this in the news. There's a whole subplot in fucking Finding Dory. Octopuses just do not like the aquarium.
They just do that.
Don't... There's that one that just kept escaping from jars. That was like a big thing back when I was in high school. No matter what, he could get out. Point is, octopuses are very cool creatures. But can you give me an octopus fact?
As long as their beak can get through the opening, the like one hard part of their body, that's their little mouth, the rest of the octopus can get through no matter how big it is.
That's awesome. That's like cat logic, and I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Follow-up question. The thing that I kept thinking about and was too stupid to Google at any point was how long can an octopus go without like water? Do they have gills?
Not that long.
Okay.
Not that long.
Okay.
They have like ventricles
Mhm.
on like the side of their head that pump water through the same way as like the top of a stingray. Stingrays have gills underneath, but they've got the ventricles to pump out the sand on top. But an octopus like just has the ventricles.
So this is like if I was like trying to breathe with only a shot glass of oxygen.
Basically, yeah.
Okay. Canceled.
But-
Never mind. That's just stupid. Throw it away. Premise is done. I don't believe it anymore. Stupid. Hate it. 69 out of 100.
Nice.
Yeah.
Whoever sent this obviously has no idea about the physical limitations of life underwater. Well, might as well throw these in the fire.
Again, I like that. I know it's like because it's like commercial game that they want as many people to play as possible, but I love that they just never broached the question of sex. I'm glad they never like interrogate that. It would be so easy to make stupid hentai jokes.
Yeah.
For the whole duration of the thing, but they never do anything about it. They don't even like say like, oh, like he's a very generous lover. They never inquire about the sex life at any point beyond like how do they have kids?
Yeah.
Good on them. Would you say that this game has like influenced the things that you have sought out video game wise or media wise?
I think it makes me more willing to try something weird.
Yeah.
I think this was kind of my first major foray into a weird indie game. And it's definitely made me more willing to try since. And it also clearly kicked off a love for the fact that I love games with weird mechanics. I love games that are not just your standard, like, this is how the game works. Click these buttons, move this guy around, interact. I like that it uses the trackpad. You gotta move this guy's wobbly little legs and grab a bunch of stuff in the same way that I like games where you have to do very specific weird things in tandem with what the game is about. The way I like that Signs of the Sojourner is matching up types of conversation. The same way that I like that Immortality is sorting through film clips and doing match cuts.
Yeah. All of this is true. You said it so eloquently. And then I'm like zooming out a little bit. It's a game about an octopus that's also a dad.
I know.
Like, it's like, I'm not trying to be like, how did they think of this? They must have been on so many drugs. And I'm normally like, shut the fuck up when people say that, because some people are just genuinely creative. But at the same time, they were also college students. So maybe they're just like, you know what's really fucking funny is octopuses.
Yeah.
Yeah. Reasonable in this case, but also like it is a fun and well-made game, and obviously they can't be taking drugs the entire development cycle, but like whatever.
It's also clearly an idea that everyone involved loved so much, otherwise they wouldn't have taken this student project they made and turned it into a real game and studio.
Juxtapose it with like the story behind Portal, where it's these group of students made this thing, they presented it. Gabe Newell of Valve was like, I like the cut of your jib. You're making a game off of this. Come over here. And we're putting a studio weight behind this thing, and we're going to package it in like this orange box collection. Versus this game, which again is made by college students. This was an extracurricular activity for them. They weren't doing this as like getting money out of it. It was released for free. And then, a group of them decided to like make a project out of it. They're inclusive of the people that made the game in the sense of like giving them shares of the company and letting them like get royalties off of the profits of the game. But even while they're making the game, they are working jobs to actually afford to live in the place that they're living. And they're working out of an office space that is also where they live. It's a very inspiring story and very true to the nature of creation, that it's not always about getting lucky. You can persevere and make something if you're all driven and have the passion to do it. But it is also a challenge to get there because of the obstacles that come with real life. So I like that was like my big takeaway from this. As much as I enjoyed the game, I very much enjoyed reading the story behind it more, because there was so much weight and risk and time and dedication in getting this thing made. And yeah, it's a silly game where you can either wait in line as an Octodad or like run across the velvet rope and knock everything over to give them your ticket. But
Mm-hmm.
the game has a lot of heart, and a lot of heart went into it. So
Yes.
thank you, Young Horses. Anything else that you want to say about Octodad and what it means to you?
I think people should go play it. I think it's a game that I talk about a lot, and it's goofy, and it's the kind of thing where like it is goofy enough that I am almost embarrassed that I love it so much. But like let a little whimsy into your life.
Absolutely. And I think it can be said that this is like a game that can be credited, not solely, but like as like the games that made things like Twitch possible. Because like this inherent like thrill of like watching somebody play a video game and not just like play it the same way as everybody else would play through like say BioShock Infinite or something like that. But somebody was like, this is just a very silly game and everybody's going to engage with the mechanics differently. And it's just funny to see people react to the game. It's not just about the game itself, but also about reacting to the game with somebody else. So people who couldn't play this game on their own at the time, or people who don't have somebody to share it with, having an avenue through which to experience this game. That is Twitch culture. That's how like streaming was able to take off.
Exactly.
It's great. And yeah, people should check this game out. It's never more than $15. I bought it for $3.75 just on the Switch. It happened to be on sale. So if you even can't throw $15 at it, just wishlist it. It'll inevitably go on sale and you'll have a fun time with it. It's a great little 3-hour experience. What is your favorite level or moment or like thing to do in the game?
I like a lot of the aquarium stuff. There's also just something very charming about the grocery store.
I like the grocery store, yeah.
I like the grocery store a lot. I also love the wedding.
Yeah.
One day I will succeed at getting the trick shotgun wedding achievement instead of just beating my wife with the wedding ring.
The wedding level is just like this fun thing where you can like fall over.
Yeah.
There's a whole room that's basically optional, which is like you have to cut through like the reception room. And it's like, as like a gamer, have the brain mindset of like, I should be very careful, but also nobody's looking at you. So you could just barrel through and knock everything over and then press the party button and then do a bunch of dance moves with your tentacles.
Yes.
It can be both.
It can be both. But I think the grocery store as a whole is probably one of my favorite levels just because of like, you get all those bits. You get the trying to be normal. You got to deal with a recently mopped floor covered in banana peels in the fruit aisle. So you got that slipping and sliding. But I also like that it introduces a lot of later mechanics that you end up using a lot, like by going into the freezer and having to climb over things, but then also randomly getting sucked up the air vent, a thing that happens several times.
It's great.
Throughout. It braces you. It prepares you for the fact that, you can get yeeted into a different thing periodically in this game.
Yeah. It's right at that like point in the game where it's like, it's not just teaching you how to do things anymore, but you're also still learning from it. But like when you're replaying it, it still makes it entertaining to play.
Yeah. And all the background dialogue is so funny.
It is just like that over the top kind of like, I just grabbed the last cereal box. I sure hope nobody takes it while I turn around kind of thing. It's a silly game. Following the release of Octodad Dadliest Catch, Young Horses would go on to develop Bugsnax. Did you ever play Bugsnax?
I actually haven't. It's on my list of games to play. Actually, it is one that I want to visit. I know it got a lot of like mixed responses, and I know it was almost like Young Horses trying to take a little more of that. There is a more serious story happening underneath, and not a lot of people vibed with the way that came out in the game, but that hasn't really deterred me. I just haven't had time.
Right.
I do say bunger regularly as a result of that game, despite not having played it yet.
I like the song. I haven't played it yet myself, but I do like Kiro Kiro Benito. So it's like this company's really good at getting songs made for their video games.
Yeah, the Octodad song gets stuck in my head periodically.
Yeah, it's a fun song. That's Octodad, Dadliest Catch. At the end of every episode, I like to give the guests an opportunity to make some recommendations for things related to our discussion. What would you recommend to listeners based off your love of Octodad?
Okay, I have 3 different things.
Go for it.
On the gaming end of things, I would like to recommend the tabletop role-playing game Kobold Story. The premise of Kobold Story is that you and the rest of your players are a group of kobolds that works for a necromancer, and you're running errands in the city. People don't tend to like kobolds in the city, so you do often get that same element of like stealth, trying to do silly little absurd tasks. It's very simple, it's just D6s, it's very easy to pick up, very short game, delightful. Same kind of goofy guy energy as Octodad. On the end of let some joy into your life, just have a little whimsy, listen to the SpongeBob SquarePants musical.
Yeah.
Yeah. We love some aquatic whimsy. The SpongeBob SquarePants musical on Broadway is way better than it has any right to be, especially if you can find a video of it.
There's a lot of talent that went into like the songwriting for all of that.
It's so
like,
good.
If you look up the people who like contributed the music to it, it is insane.
It's awesome. Every performer in it is amazing too. I actually saw it on Broadway.
Yeah.
With my mom, and I experienced such like unbridled joy in that moment. I think about it all the time. Yeah, and it's another one of those shows where it's like very much all the people involved are putting a lot of heart into it. There is a live Foley artist on stage doing all the sound effects, and they spotlight him during the opening number so you can see that he is making all the sound effects in real time for the entire musical.
It's great. What else do you have for recommendations?
And my last one is go look at some fish. Sometimes you just have to stare at a fish, whether that means going to your local aquarium if there is one, if that means just going to a pet store and staring at the tropical fish in the back. Sometimes you just have to go look at fish.
Mm-hmm. I'm not, anti-aquarium or anything like that personally. So I'm just saying this is like relating a story. Not all aquariums are fucking SeaWorld, okay?
Correct.
Okay. A lot of these things are rehabilitation centers or taking care of creatures that are not able to adjust to wildlife for whatever reason. And a lot of them are like taking responsibility for like fish that were like in circumstances that they should not have been in the first place. And this is a happy medium. I understand that. I'm I need to qualify this with so many things because it's a personal story and I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, especially yours, because you are somebody who volunteers at aquariums and you are giving your time and energy to taking care and educating on something very important, such as the thing that is 70% of our planet. All right. Qualification over. I had a panic attack in 2017 when I was at an aquarium, and I'm never going back.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Go look at fish elsewhere.
Yeah. But that's not me saying like, don't go to the aquarium. I was just having like, it was me projecting my own like senses of feeling trapped in a situation because I was going on a work trip.
Oh God.
So I was like, oh God, I'm doing this as a work thing. Oh God, this feels like a prison. Oh God, is that turtle in a prison? And that turtle was a metaphor for me. I realize now what the problem was.
Yeah, that's fair.
I was like one of those like, why am I here instead of at home? Why am I here? Why is this technically at work? That kind of, I was like, I was in one of those spirals.
Yeah, that'll do it.
And I was taking it out on the aquarium. So like, I was like, muttering like Foucault thoughts to myself about like the nature of prisons and everything like that. When I was just like, I'm just not having a good day at work today. And for some reason they took me to the aquarium.
That's really funny. You could go look at a koi pond.
Yeah. I love koi ponds. I love looking at wildlife. It's great.
Yeah.
I love parks. I love nature reserves. I love like little national parks.
Perfect.
My recommendation, touch some fucking grass.
There we go. Let yourself go experience joy, whimsy, and something silly.
Go outside and do literally anything. Any other recommendations?
I think those are my related to Octodad recommendations, which is surprisingly hard to think of because Octodad really is its own beast. And I was like, what can I recommend here?
The recommendations just feel pretty obvious. Side note, the fact that Octodad also gets freaked out over the aquarium makes him just like me for real. I am also the Octodad.
So true.
I literally like wrote in my notes while playing it, he's just like me for real about the aquarium. And that made me like think like, why did that happen? Why was I freaking out about the aquarium? which brings us to here. Anyway, my recommendations, I try to find stuff that wasn't super obvious, so I took Splatoon off of my short list here. If you know Octodad, you probably know Splatoon. You know the relation. I know one's a squid, one's an octopus, two different animals.
They're both cephalopods.
Yeah. Squidward being an octopus drives me crazy.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Untitled. Listen, listeners, that wasn't a random aside. Squidward is canonically an octopus, despite his name being Squidward and having 6 limbs.
Mm-hmm.
Untitled Goose Game is a recommendation I do have. There's a whole genre of video games. It's just like
you are an Goose Game.
You are an animal. That is the whole genre of game like this. Untitled Goose Game, also a very like streaming friendly game. Also one that's like important that you just don't play it by yourself. Play it with somebody around you, even if you're not doing a 2-player experience. Just because it is fun to experience a game like that with somebody else, and it also has like light stealth mechanics. Speaking of light stealth mechanics, you are also an animal. Stray, fun game. You're a kitty cat. You're literally just a kitty cat, and it's also...
Speaking of kitty cat.
Hello, everybody. This is Funky Boy. This is an audio-only podcast, but my cat
This is awesome.
My cat just jumped on the desk. His name's Funky Boy. He is large. He used to be very tiny.
So big.
We found him when he was 1 pound and 4 weeks old. Now he's like 1.5 years, and he's bigger than anything else in the house. He is all white, blue eyes. Subscribe to my Patreon at patreon.com/Keifer's Corner to get more Funky Boy pics.
The Funky Boy's a celebrity in our house.
We love Funky Boy.
It's ever since like the first post you made with a photo of Funky Boy, I'm like, I have to keep seeing all the updates about this cat. He's so small, and now he's so large.
He's everything to me. I love my cats.
Like, literally, whenever I see a new Funky Boy post, I text my partner, I go, Funky Boy update.
New Funky Boy just drops.
Yeah.
That's Funky Boy. I highly recommend following me on social media at Danny Vegito on Blue Sky and Twitter if you want to see Funky Boy pics. So that's my other recommendation. Stray, cat game, stealth, little cute robots. Check out Stray. Ape Out, though. Ape Out. You are an ape who is escaping captivity in a zoo.
Oh, hell yeah.
It has this emergent jazz drumming soundtrack to it, where like the music is basically reacting to the actions that you make. And those actions are doing things like grabbing a security guard by the shoulders and using him as a human shield while another security guard fires a gun and then like accidentally kills this person you're using as a shield, and then throwing that guard back at the guard to kill them. And then a drum cymbal will crash as like the bodies collide with one another. And mind you, you are a giant fucking gorilla. It's only a few hours long. Check out Ape Out. Ape Out, check out. Ape check out. Out, ape check. Ape Out.
That's going on the list.
It's only a few bucks. If you haven't played it already, Ape Out. And per our earlier conversation, get a library card.
Get a library card.
Yeah. Emma, this is a really fun episode.
I'm so glad.
Thank you for having me on your show, and thank you for being on my show.
Yeah, thank you for being on my show, and thank you for having me on your show.
Absolutely. After this episode, folks, if you haven't already listened to Emma's very wonderful podcast, I would highly recommend listening to my episode on True Grit and then listening to the rest of the podcast. But I'll let Emma promote themselves now. Emma, go for it.
So yeah, you can find the podcast Unnatural Selection. It should be on basically any podcatcher. You can find the show on Twitter at UnselectPod. You can find me on Twitter at EmmaTSCA. That's EMATSCA. That's basically the only place you can find me because, along with being bad at technology, I'm bad at social media. Somebody else made my Twitter for me in 2014, and it's the only one I got.
You're too busy.
I just don't like it.
You got a lot going on right now.
Always. If you want to read anything that I've written, you can go to your library and pick up a copy of Best Debut Short Stories 2022. I have a short story in that collection that is about a worm that lives at the edge of the universe and its friendship with a boy born in 2012. If you want to hear me talk about more weird video games, you can check out the couple episodes of Indie Mixtape I've been on, or read my article on Uppercut Crit, which was about the one who pulls the sword from the stone shall be crowned king, which is another very weird, goofy game. Listen to other Moonshot stuff. I'm around.
That's Emma, everybody. Emma, thank you so much for being on the show. Everybody, check out the stuff that Emma's done. Thank you again for being on the show. Thank you for having me on your show. And thank you so much for listening to this episode of Select and Start. Once again, I am your host, editor, and promoter, Keifer. If you enjoyed this episode, please give the show a positive review wherever you're listening to this. Engagement helps the show, and your feedback will improve it. And if you want to get more engaged, give the show a follow on Twitter at SelectPodStart. If you have thoughts about Octodad or any other games we've discussed, send a DM or leave a comment, and I will gladly read it on the show. You can also support me on Patreon. If you pledge at least $1 a month, you will get early access to new episodes, as well as extended episodes with exclusive content and pictures of Funky Boy. That's on patreon.com/Keifer's Corner. You can find the link to that and the rest of my projects in the description of this episode. Select and Start is on the Moonshot Network, which is supported by its own Patreon. Find out more on moonshotpods.com. The art for the show is made by my best friend, Avery Ott. You can follow him on social media with the handle at Avery Robin Ott. That's AVRY Robin OTT. The show's theme song was composed by Mike Petrie. You can check out the description for all of their works, as well as Emma's. All right, I think that's it.
Very good Octodad impression. Very impressive, that last one.
Thank you. I just threw that at the wall.